Hello, everybody.
Come on now. Somehow. Would you hand me my?
All right. We're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to see you this afternoon. I'm Olivia Allison from the Nature Conservancy in Alabama. And today we're going to go for a walk in the forest with Keith Tassin, our Director of Conservation. But first, I want you to know that we're going to record this session.
Anybody out there? Hey, Frank.
Hey, Frank.
Hello.
Hello, Frank.
Hello.
Andrew, hello. Can we see you? All right. Anyway, we are recording this session, and that we're going to mute your microphones during the presentation. And if you have a question or a comment, just go to the bottom of your screen.
Hello, anybody? Everybody. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hey, Andrew. Can you hear us? I'm afraid he can't. At any rate, type your questions or your comments into the microphone, into the chat box at the bottom, and that'll help Keith at the end to do the question and answer period. So Nature Calls is our attempt to get you out of your house, to take you on a virtual tour into our conservation work around the state.
Okay.
And today we're going to have approximately 15 minutes of forest and fire with Keith. And then we're going to have question and answers for about 15 minutes too. And the program happens every Thursday at 3 o'clock. So we hope you'll join us next week also. But today it's my pleasure to introduce Keith Tassin, who, as I said, is our Director of Conservation. And he's a biologist with 29 years of experience, and his specialty is pine ecosystems and forest restoration. So Keith, take us to the woods.
All right. Thank you, Olivia. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to share my screen with my presentation here. Too many boxes to move around here. All right, here we go. So our forest work is part of three broad programs that our conservation focus in Alabama functions under. So we have, if you've been here, you've seen previous presentations from our freshwater program director and our coastal program director about those two broad program areas. And I'm going to talk today about our forest work. So our forest work is composed of really two broad areas: land protection and then restoration. And so we'll go into some of the aspects of land protection first. It's probably what the Nature Conservancy to the outside person is known most for would be land protection, but we do a lot more than that. So this is I'm just going to highlight a couple of the areas that we've worked in for a really long time. This is up in North Alabama. You can see this, you can follow my cursor on here. This is the Tennessee-Alabama line. This is the Southern Cumberlands, or our Paint Rock River watershed. Scottsboro would be just to the southwest or southeast of this area, and Huntsville being just to the west of this area. I'm just going to highlight a few projects that we've worked on over that time. So one of our biggest land acquisitions we ever did was the Walls of Jericho acquisition, which actually crossed the Tennessee-Alabama line. This was in 2003 and included this 9,000 acres on the Tennessee side and about a little over 12,000 acres on the Alabama side. And these are all now part of the Skyline Wildlife Management Area. But many of you are probably familiar with the Walls of Jericho. It's one of the most popular hiking trails that we have in Alabama. One of the next areas that we worked on in 2005, we started acquiring land at our Sharp Bingham Mountain Preserve, which is now our largest nature preserves that we have in the state, around 4,000 acres. And then in 2013, we worked with the state of Alabama and some other conservation partners to acquire this big block of land known as Jacobs Mountain, which is a little over 11,000 acres. And so in the last 20 years in this project area, we've helped the state in particular protect, over 30,000 acres. So this has been one of the most successful areas that we've worked in the state. And this is also one of our largest, most important hardwood forest blocks that are remaining not only in Alabama, but in the Southeast, including this county has more caves than any other county in the whole United States. So it's really diverse from a karst and cave standpoint as well. Next area that I'm going to focus on is the work that we've done down the coast. So this is Mobile Bay right in the middle here, Mobile being at the top of that, Mobile County and Baldwin County. So really our work started here before the chapter was even organized. We didn't have a chapter in Alabama until 1989. So a lot of this work was being done out of our regional office, where we actually helped establish the Bon Secours. If you look right at the bottom of your screen there, those areas that are highlighted in green, we helped establish the Bon Secours National Wildlife Refuge and actually purchased many of the original tracts that were added to that refuge. One of the next big projects that we started on was, if you go up to the northern end of Baldwin County here, this sort of turquoise green color, we in 2004 started acquiring tracts at our Splinter Hill Bog Preserve, which is also one of our most visited and well-known nature preserves in the state. Since that time, between our acquisitions in the state, we've protected a little over 3,000 acres at that site. Another one of our biggest land acquisitions that we've done in this chapter's history is this big area along the Perdido River, right on the Florida line here, where we acquired 14,000 acres as part of really one of the largest transactions the Nature Conservancy's ever done, where they purchased almost, or a little over 300,000 acres, most of that in the South, but some of that up in Wisconsin as well. And so our part of that was this 14,000 acres that we worked over time to transfer to the state of Alabama, and that's operated as a wildlife management area now. Another big focus area where we have been working really since the late 90s is the Grand Bay Savanna on the western side of Mobile County, right on the coast on the coast of Grand Bay there. Over all those years, we've basically been able to connect that whole entire coast of protected land all the way from Bayou La Battery well into Mississippi now. And so that's really one of the most successful projects we've had. A lot of success in the last 4 or 5 years, utilizing some of the oil spill money to acquire over 3,000 acres just since 2014 down there. So those are a couple of that describes most of our work, which is where we're co-opting or working with other state and federal agencies to acquire land. The Nature Conservancy started by acquiring nature preserves that they own, and we still own nature preserves. We really like to try to utilize these as demonstration sites, though. We really want to influence land management for all these areas that we have worked to protect. And so we utilize our preserves for training opportunities, ecological restoration demonstration sites, research. We allow research to go on to help further understanding of these ecosystems. Obviously, biodiversity protection was the original reason that the Nature Conservancy invested in many of these places, lots of rare plant species. Outdoor recreation, as I mentioned, we have several preserves that have really well-used nature trails throughout the state. And then really as from a fundraising standpoint, some of these preserves are really the face of the Nature Conservancy. And so we want to utilize them for that as well. So I've talked about all the land protection we've done. I just want to talk a little bit about how we prioritize that. And this has sort of changed over time, but in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, we have a scientist out of our regional office, our Eastern regional office, that has developed this model that has helped us prioritize lands that we believe are going to be the most resilient to climate change, and allow for species to migrate as that climate does change. And so this tool is called our resilient land mapping tool, and this is really how we decide on where we're going to invest these days in land protection. And I'll just give some examples of how we've utilized that in Alabama. So this is our Talladega Mountain Longleaf Pine Conservation Partnership. So just to get you oriented on this map, right in the center here, if you can see my icon or my cursor, that's Birmingham. This is the Alabama-Georgia line over here. So basically this and really our focus here is, as in the name, mountain longleaf or montane longleaf pine. And so this area this map is what we have used using that model that was developed by one of our chief scientists. We have defined what our priority focal areas are going to be for land protection and restoration. And those are the areas that are sort of highlighted with these colors inside the larger boundary. And so just a little bit of what some of these things mean. The light green colors mean that an area is considered resilient. And what that usually means is there's a lot of microclimates within those areas, which will allow species to move over as the climate changes. They can move into, adapt into different microclimates. Let's see, what's the next one on the map here? So the climate flow zones, which would be the lighter blues and the darker blues, those are basically where there's a less defined microclimates, but usually that's where you have larger blocks of intact forest that will allow species to move over time. And then you have these climate corridors, which are much narrower corridors, which allow for species to move over time. And these are usually, in this case, these are mostly ridge tops. So this area here is the whole spine of all the Talladega Mountains that will, basically allow for species to move north and to the east as climate changes there. So using that map and expanding out, basically all the other states in the Nature Conservancy in the range of longleaf have gone through this same process and have identified all of our focal areas for longleaf pine conservation in the entire range. And so this is where we will develop a land protection and restoration plan based off of these polygons that you see highlighted on here on this map. And that's where we will focus all of our resources into and try to get partners to focus their resources into longleaf pine conservation. Another program that we consider land protection working with. As you can see from this graphic, the Nature Conservancy has now enrolled about 200,000 acres in this program. It originally started in Pennsylvania in the Northeast, and it's a program primarily working with private landowners that allows us to work with, basically bring the landowner in touch with carbon markets, so they can actually sell their carbon to commercial markets, to corporations. And so that the Nature Conservancy, by doing this, we work with a third party company to basically do an assessment on the amount of carbon that their property stores. So if you look at this graphic here, one mature tree can absorb 48 pounds, 1 acre, 1 ton. And so a third of the fossil fuel emissions in the country are absorbed by trees. And so our focus here is to improve forest management, to protect these forests by providing an incentive of being able the landowner to be able to sell their carbon credits. We place a conservation easement on those properties, and then we're also able to bring them forest certification, which in some cases, in some markets, allows them an extra benefit to bring their products to market. It's called working woodlands, so there is a plan that's developed that allows them to still harvest timber, but we're trying to maximize the carbon storage over that property. So all this land protection that we've done, we really want to ensure that these lands are managed properly and restored, because we wouldn't really be protecting these areas if they weren't managed. So prescribed fire is one of the biggest management tools that we have in Alabama. 2/3 of the state of Alabama had longleaf pine ecosystems. Shortleaf pine ecosystems were in the northwest part of the state. We had blackland prairies in the central part of the state. All of these natural plant communities evolved with the fire. And so here's an example from Splinter Hill Bog of a really well-maintained open pine woodland habitat.